I like the idea that as long as it's something that you can talk about with someone else,
Hmm.
then for one, it just for actually it just furthers the point that the concept of the vibe is built for connection,
Hmm. Yep.
right? So if I feel like something, even if I feel like something is really good, like there's a good vibe happening in whatever context, and someone else says there isn't, I think that invites a conversation which perhaps could connect us better.
Sure.
Or if we both feel like this is a great vibe, well, then we know that we share this thing and we're both sharing a similar experience in a similar way, which normally isn't always the case.
Sure. Yeah.
And now the amount that I'm saying vibe, I'm generally concerned that I'm going to be saying it too often after this conversation, which I didn't initially account for. So we'll see how this goes. So since you've been doing this studying, how have you been using it differently? How about that?
Oh, that's a good question, but a tough question. I mean, I've been involved with this for so long. I guess it kind of evolves over time, right? So early on, I was really interested in creating a certain kind of theoretical or philosophical framework so that we could better understand this thing we call a vibe, right? In more recent
Right.
years, I'm less interested in that theoretical framework and more interested in documenting the diversity of vibe talk that exists in the world. Right. So like I was saying earlier, like North America, South America, Asia, et cetera, right? They're all different versions of this. And so that's really what I'm interested in nowadays, where how do I go about chronicling all these different examples and making sense of this? Like, why is this so common, not just in America and in contemporary times, but throughout history and across the entire world? Right. Now, what I will say about that, and it connects to what you were saying earlier, um, I begin from a certain kind of premise about human beings that we are interconnected at a certain kind of level, right? That could be spiritual, it could be material, doesn't make a difference, right? But essentially, we are symbiotic creatures. In other words, we live in a certain kind of ecological relationship with each other where one thing that affects me affects you and vice versa. And that's true whether
Mm.
you believe in vibes or not. That's just how we're kind of built, right? But then if you understand how we're symbiotic related to each other, then that opens the door for this discussion about vibes. Right. So if we think about group dynamics, so if it's just you and your best friend, there's a certain kind of connection there and a certain kind of vibe there, right? Then you bring in a third person though, and that third person will change the dynamic. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. Then a fourth person and a fifth person, so on and so on and so on, right? So each addition to the group will change the nature of the group communication and the group connection. Again, that could be in good ways or bad ways, but there's no way to avoid that, right? Likewise, you could be on a deserted island by yourself, and there's still a vibe there. There's still a certain kind of connection to the land,
Right.
the sky, to the air, to the water, so on and so on and so on.
Right. That vibe is hopelessness on that deserted island. That's what that vibe is. Desperation, hunger.
Not necessarily though. Like, let's say you had enough food, enough water to survive, right?
Yeah.
Some people actually like being by themselves. That's where they vibe on themselves the best, right? So you have some people that
Right.
are introverted, some people that are extroverted, and we vibe on different experiences in different kinds of ways. Right. Another example of that, and you kind of mentioned this before in passing. Um, so you said before you live in Barcelona. I love Barcelona. Love it there. I love the vibe there, so on and so on and so on. Someone else can go there though, and they could recognize the same vibe, but they don't like that vibe for some reason, right? So it's a
Great point.
right, like
Right.
they experience it for they have different preferences. Like I like certain kind of music, you like certain kinds of music, right? The music's objective
Right.
is there, but we orient to the music differently. The same thing with a vibe.
Right. Yeah. Barcelona, it can be a bit of a partier city. It could be a bit of a younger vibe because there's so many schools here,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like universities, etc. So that's part of it. Where I would say like there's more of a, you know, where if you go to Madrid or you go to London, you know, even Toronto, I think that's more of a, for lack of a better term, and more adult cities. You know, like where there's more where there's a lot of professional jobs that are there. There's a lot more homes, a lot more settling down. Whereas Barcelona is not so much of a big city, and there's not so much urban sprawl, and so the vibe would be a little bit younger. Like there's always something going on. There's always something fun to do, and I can understand if some people will be here and be like, oh no, this is too chaotic of a vibe for me. If anything, I think I would agree with that. I think I've eventually found a place a little bit outside the center
Mm-hmm.
because the center vibe wasn't exactly what I wanted. But I think just all that to say, just your point of like, it doesn't really matter where you are, what situation you're in. The vibe, I think, is an invitation for us always to check in with ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and then ask a question for, you know, why is this the vibe that I'm feeling in this scenario?